This is TWiT.
Need a book about practical fish keeping?
Yep.
Perhaps you should look first on the dark web, at least according to dark web researcher Emily Wilson, director of analysis at Terbium Labs, a Baltimore-based dark web data intelligence company. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Hi, thanks, Megan. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So in your piece entitled 5 Surprisingly Wholesome Things You Can Find on the Dark Web, you write about many of the surprises you find in your research, including a guide to fish keeping and how to buy a grilled cheese sandwich on the dark web. Tell us a little bit about the surprising things that you've found searching on the dark web.
Sure, yeah. So, I am a director of analysis here at Terbium Labs, and so my job is to know what's going on the dark web, and that means seeing a lot of, troubling things day to day, a lot of fraudulent information, a lot of drugs, weapons sometimes, a little, nastier things other times. And then every so often, my job gets a little bit more ridiculous, a little bit more interesting because someone decides to sell guides to practical origami for $2. A nice cart add-on, if you will, for all of your other illegal information.
That one, I don't know. That one made a little more sense than the grilled cheese, but I don't know. I wish you had ordered the grilled cheese so you could find out.
So the grilled cheese, is an interesting one. It's a legacy offering from the original Silk Road marketplace. So that's been many, many years ago now, but it stood up as a testament that the dark web community, at least the criminal community, doesn't always take itself too seriously.
Exactly. So what is there like a majority of something? Like what's the most of what you find when you're searching around on the dark web?
Sure. So I'll talk about most of what I find on the criminal side of the dark web. I'll say the dark web more broadly is a place full of perfectly legitimate and legal information. We did a study a couple of years ago looking at kind of what proportion of different types of information shows up on, we looked at Tor hidden services in particular, which is one of the most popular networks you'll hear about when you talk about the dark web. So more than half of the content on the dark web is legal. There's a lot of really, perfectly vanilla, legitimate stuff out there. In terms of the kind of more criminal side, a lot of drugs. Most of the dark web offerings are for drugs. And after that, you get into fraudulent information, whether it's bank accounts, stolen credit cards, credentials for movie streaming sites or ride-sharing services, kind of anything you could need to relax on a Saturday evening or create a new persona.
I'm curious, because I realize your article is about the wholesome stuff, but like when I think of the dark web, I'm very dark web illiterate. Like I have all these, these images in my mind. From your perspective, if your job is to kind of monitor, let's say, the dark web, both good and bad, how do you keep track of all the bad stuff without getting yourself into trouble?
That is a perfectly reasonable question, and one I'm a little surprised I don't get asked more often. People have a lot of concerns about the dark web. One of the most common questions I get after if I go and speak or if I go and kind of chat with a group of people, no one ever asks me outright, but they come up to me afterward and they say, if I start exploring the dark web, am I going to get arrested? Like, is the FBI going to break down my door? I will say there's a lot of tradecraft around the way that we interact on the dark web. That's something that's true of all security companies. But broadly speaking, there is nothing illegal about using the dark web, about accessing a lot of this content. Obviously, there's some content like child exploitation that is illegal to simply see. But in most cases, if you're just looking around, if you're not purchasing anything, right, as long as you have the right security measures in place, you're not going to get into too much trouble.
Yeah.
So how do you access the dark web? Like, do you just through Tor?
Yeah, so fair question. I'll give you a couple of highlights, but I won't get into too much of how we do what we do. So we do use Tor, and I recommend if any of your viewers or listeners want to start exploring, definitely go to the Tor project. They do amazing work. It's a great resource about using the dark web safely. They also have the Tor browser, which is, I would say, probably the most popular browser for accessing the Tor network. Having a good browser you can trust and a good VPN are two of the most kind of foundational aspects to using the dark web safely. And then after that, it depends on what you're doing, how you're working, and what you're worried about.
Obviously, like we were just talking about, your article is about the wholesome things that you find on the dark web. What makes what you find on the dark web unique in that regard compared to what you find in the open web? Like, why would someone choose to go to the dark web to buy a grilled cheese sandwich?
That's a perfectly good question. There are plenty of things that you can purchase on the dark web that are legal, that you could get from any online retailer or any local pharmacy or, eBay. Mm-hmm. A few reasons why you would go to the dark web for that. One, you are already there and you're bored and you make a purchase, which is something I think all of us have done.
Yeah, I mean, you see a grilled cheese sandwich, you buy it. Has been my experience.
It's an impulse purchase.
Yeah,
it's an add-on, right? It's that add-on for free shipping. And then in other cases, you might be purchasing something that seems perfectly legitimate to us, but might be illegal or very difficult to find in other countries, or even in this country, there are things that might be available in one state that might be hard to get in another. I think especially, there are plenty of legal medical supplies that end up getting traded on some of these online pharmacies. And then, there are people who just value their privacy and anonymity and the security that you get from using some of these dark web marketplaces. And that's a benefit to people.